300 years ago, humanity almost died in the cold darkness of space. The colony ship Dawnseeker carried 12,000 sleeping humans toward a new home. They had left Earth behind, chasing dreams of fresh worlds and open skies. But deep in the Velen spiral arm, far from any star, the ship's engines failed. The fuel was gone. The air recyclers were dying. In 6 days, every man, woman, and child aboard would be dead. Captain Yoon Ga sent distress signals into the void. She did not expect anyone to answer. Humanity was alone out here. They had never met another intelligent species. They were children lost in an endless ocean of stars, but someone heard the Mirathi found them on the 4th day. Their ship was beautiful, shaped like a silver leaf floating through darkness. The Mirathi themselves were tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that glowed with soft blue light. They had large eyes full of kindness and voices like gentle music. They did not speak human languages. But they understood fear. They understood death, and they chose to help. The Mirathi gave Dawnseeker fuel. They gave medicine for the sick. They gave food and water and star charts showing safe paths through dangerous space. Captain Ye tried to offer payment. She offered technology, resources, anything humanity could give. The Mirathi leader simply touched her hand with 2 of his own. Through broken translation, he said words that humanity would remember forever. This is the gift between travelers. When you are strong, give to those who are weak. This is enough. Then they left. They asked for nothing. They simply saved 12,000 lives and disappeared into the stars. Humanity survived. They found new worlds. They built colonies and cities and fleets of ships. They joined the Galactic Assembly and met dozens of alien species. Some were friendly, some were not. But through all the centuries, through all the changes, humanity never forgot the Mirathi. Every human child learned the story. Every ship captain knew the name of the silver leaf vessel that saved their ancestors. The Mirathi became legend, symbol, and sacred memory all at once. Now, 300 years later, Captain Park Do-yeon stood on the bridge of his patrol vessel, Remembrance, and stared at his communication screen with horror in his heart. The message was broken, filled with static and fear. But the words were clear enough. This is Veleth Prime. This is the Mirathi homeworld. Please, anyone, we need help. The Krath are coming. They will take our people. They will destroy everything. Please, we have no weapons. We cannot fight. Please help us. Do-yeon was 42 years old. He had served in the human fleet for 20 years. He had seen pirates and smugglers and small border conflicts. But he had never seen anything like this. The Dominion of Krath was a nightmare given form. They were a warrior species that conquered weaker races and used them as slaves. Their empire stretched across 200 worlds. Their fleet numbered in the thousands. They were cruel, efficient, and utterly without mercy, and they had chosen the Mirathi as their next target. Do-yeon turned to his communication officer. Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Priority 1, emergency. The connection took 3 minutes. When the screen flickered to life, he saw Admiral Kim Yuno looking back at him. She was young for an admiral, only 38, but she had earned her rank through brilliance and courage. Her grandmother had been a child aboard Dawnseeker. She had grown up with the story of the Mirathi burned into her soul. Captain Park, she said. Report. Do-yeon told her everything. The distress call. The Krath blockade. The timeline. The Mirathi had 3 days before the invasion began. Yuna listened without expression. But Do-yeon could see something changing in her eyes. Something old and deep was waking up. How many ships can we send? She asked. Her aide checked the fleet records. 47 combat-ready vessels, Admiral. The Krath have over 300 in their blockade alone. Those are impossible odds, someone said. Yuna's voice was quiet but hard as steel. The Mirathi saved us when we were dying. They asked for nothing. They gave everything. And now they're calling for help. She looked directly at Do-yeon through the screen. Captain, set course for Veleth Prime, maximum speed. Admiral, her aide said carefully, if we send the fleet, we might lose it. All of it, we would be defenseless. Then we'll be defenseless, Una said. But we will not be ungrateful. We will not be cowards. We will not forget. She stood up and addressed every officer in the command center. 300 years ago, strangers showed us kindness. They didn't know us. They had no reason to help. But they saw humans dying and they chose to act. That choice gave us everything we have. Our colonies, our children, our future. All of it exists because the Mirathi looked at frightened strangers and decided to be kind. Her voice grew stronger. Now it's our turn? Now we show the galaxy what that kindness created. We're going to Velith Prime. We're going to fight the Krath. And if we die, we'll die paying a debt that can never truly be repaid. She looked back at Do-Yun. Captain, you'll lead the advance force. I'll bring the main fleet behind you. Tell the Mirathi that help is coming. Tell them that humanity remembers. Do-Yun felt tears in his eyes. He didn't try to hide them. Yes, Admiral. Humanity remembers. He ended the call and turned to his crew. They had heard everything. Every face showed fear, but every face also showed something else. Pride, purpose, the knowledge that they were about to do something that mattered. You heard the Admiral, Do-Yun said. Set course for Velith Prime. We have a debt to pay. The remembrance turned toward distant stars and flew toward war. The news spread faster than light itself on every human colony. On every station and outpost and ship, the word traveled through networks and whispers and desperate calls between friends. The Mirathi were in danger. The people who saved humanity 300 years ago were about to die. And the fleet was going to help them. Admiral Kim Una expected 47 ships. By the time the fleet reached the first rally point, she had 63. By the second rally point, she had 90. And they kept coming. They came from everywhere. Mining ships from the asteroid belts around Kepler-7, cargo freighters from the trade routes near Proxima Station. Research vessels, passenger liners, even private yachts owned by wealthy families. They were not warships. They were not built for battle. But their captains had heard the call, and they could not stay behind. Lieutenant Choi Minji stood on the bridge of remembrance and watched the fleet grow on her tactical display. She was 29 years old, a tactical officer with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had studied the Krath for years. She knew their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses, and she knew that what she was seeing was madness. Captain, she said to Do-Yun, most of these ships have no weapons. They're civilian vessels. What are they going to do against Krath plasma cannons? Do-Yun watched a small transport ship take position alongside a destroyer. The transport was called Lucky Star. It carried medical supplies and food for colony worlds. Now it was joining a war fleet. They're going to fight, he said simply. Same as us. They'll die, probably. Do-Yun turned to face her. But they came anyway. That means something, Lieutenant. That means everything. Minji looked at her display again. She saw the names of ships scrolling past. Morning Light, Hope of Soul, Grandmother's Promise. New Horizon. Each one represented families who had decided that debt mattered more than safety. That memory mattered more than fear. She felt something shift inside her chest. Something that felt like fire. Yes, Captain, she said quietly. It does. By the time the fleet reached the final rally point, 200 ships had gathered. Admiral Una addressed them all through a fleet-wide broadcast. Her face appeared on every screen, in every cockpit, on every bridge. Humans of the fleet, she began. You know why we're here. You know what we face? The Krath have 300 warships waiting for us. They have better weapons, better armor, more experience in battle. By any reasonable measure, we cannot win this fight. She paused. Her eyes were bright and fierce. But humans have never been reasonable. We crawled out of caves and built cities. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We flew to the stars on rockets made of metal and dreams. And 300 years ago, when we were dying in the dark, strangers saved us. Strangers with 4 arms and glowing skin and hearts full of kindness. Her voice grew stronger. The Mirathi gave us a future. Now the Krath want to take their future away. They want to break them, enslave them, destroy everything they are. And they think no one will stop them. They think the Mirathi are alone. Yuna smiled. It was not a gentle smile. They're wrong. The Mirathi have us. And we remember. Across 200 ships, humans cheered. They cheered in engine rooms and medical bays. They cheered in cockpits and cargo holds. They cheered because they were afraid and they were going anyway. They cheered because they were human, and this was what humans did, far away. Orbiting the blue-green world of Velith Prime, the Krath blockade waited. Commander Vorath sat in his command chair and studied the sensor reports with bored contempt. The Mirathi had sent distress calls. Someone had apparently answered. "How many ships?" he asked. 200, Commander, his sensor officer replied. Mostly human. Mostly civilian vessels. Vorath laughed. It was an ugly sound like stones grinding together. The Krath were large beings, covered in dark scales, with 4 eyes and mouths full of sharp teeth. They had conquered dozens of species. They had broken worlds. They feared nothing. Humans, Vorath said. Those soft little creatures from the far spiral. They have no real fleet. No real power. Why would they come here to die for these glowing weaklings? No one answered. No one knew. It doesn't matter, Vorath decided. Let them come. We'll crush them in an hour and add their survivors to our slave pens. Perhaps humans will make good workers. He leaned back in his chair, utterly confident. He had never lost a battle. He had never faced an enemy he couldn't break. These humans were insects. The Mirathi were worms. This would be simple. On the surface of Velith Prime, Elder Solemn Light stood in the great temple and watched the sky. She was very old now, her forearms thin and trembling, her glow faded to soft silver. She remembered the stories her grandmother had told her. Stories of a dying ship. Stories of frightened aliens with only 2 arms and strange round eyes. Stories of a choice to help when helping cost nothing and meant everything. Elder, a young Mirathi said, the human fleet has arrived. They're preparing to attack the blockade. Solemn Light closed her large eyes. She remembered the human captain from 3 centuries ago. A woman named Ga, with tears on her face and desperate hope in her voice. She had promised that humanity would never forget. And now, against impossible odds, her descendants had come. They really came, Solemn Light whispered. After all this time? They really came. The young Mirathi looked confused. Elder, there are only 200 ships. The Krath have many more. The humans cannot win. Solemn Light opened her eyes. For a moment, her glow grew brighter. You don't understand humans, she said softly. They don't fight because they can win. They fight because they must. They fight because they remember, and that makes them more dangerous than any army. She looked up at the sky, where distant lights were beginning to move. Watch, child. Watch what kindness creates. The first human ship to die was called Morning Light. She was a cargo freighter, built to carry grain between colonies. Her captain was a woman named Beek Soyoung, 60 years old, with gray hair and steady hands. She had 3 grandchildren back on Earth. She had volunteered anyway. Morning Light flew straight at the Krath battle line. She had no weapons. She had no shields. But she had a hold full of mining explosives. Loaded in secret at the rally point. Commander Vorath didn't even bother to destroy her. He thought she was running. He thought she was trying to slip past the blockade. He was still laughing when Morning Light crashed into his largest cruiser and exploded. The cruiser broke in half. 2,000 Krath died in seconds. Beek Soyoung's last words were broadcast to the entire fleet. For the Mirathi. For the debt. For my grandchildren's future? Then the battle truly began. Admiral Kim Yuna commanded from the Bridge of Soul's Promise, her flagship. She had spent the entire journey planning. She knew they couldn't win a straight fight. The Krath were too strong, too many, too well armed. So she didn't give them a straight fight. The civilian ships spread out in a wide formation, constantly moving, constantly changing position. They became a living maze. Craft targeting computers couldn't lock on. They were designed to track military vessels in formation, not hundreds of chaotic civilian ships flying random patterns. All combat vessels, fire at will, Una ordered. Civilian ships, keep moving. Draw their fire. Stay alive as long as you can. The human warships struck from within the maze. They would appear from behind a freighter, fire their weapons, then disappear again before the craft could respond. It was like fighting ghosts. Captain Park Do-yeon led the Remembrance through the chaos. His weapons officer, a young man named Han Ji-soo, fired torpedo after torpedo into craft hulls. Lieutenant Choi Minji called out targets, her voice sharp and fast. Destroyer at Mark 7. Cruiser turning to port. Fighter wing incoming from above. Remembrance danced through the battle like a blade through water. Do-yeon had never flown like this. He had never needed to. But something had awakened in him. Something old and fierce and human. They destroyed 4 craft ships in the first hour, but they lost 30 of their own. The cargo ship Lucky Star took a plasma cannon blast and broke apart. Her captain, a man named Oh Taiwan, stayed at the controls until the end, steering the wreckage into a craft fighter wing. He killed 12 enemy pilots with his death. The passenger liner New Horizon shielded a damaged destroyer with her own hull. She absorbed 9 shots before she exploded. The destroyer survived and kept fighting. Everywhere, humans died. Everywhere, humans kept fighting. Commander Vorath stopped laughing after the first hour. After the second hour, he was screaming orders. These humans were insane. They weren't retreating. They weren't surrendering. They were throwing themselves at his fleet with no regard for their own lives. Why won't they break? He roared. Why won't they run? No one could answer him. The Krath had never seen anything like this. They conquered species that surrendered when defeat was certain. They broke enemies who valued their own survival, but humans didn't seem to value survival. They valued something else. Something the Krath couldn't understand. In the third hour, something changed. New ships appeared at the edge of the system. Not human ships? Different ships. The Shellan came first. They were an insectoid species with 6 legs and hard shells and compound eyes. Their ships looked like beetles made of metal. 100 vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately opened fire on the Krath flank. Why? Vorath screamed. The Shellan have no quarrel with us. But the Shellan remembered something. 50 years ago, their colony on Veth 7 had suffered a plague. They had no cure. They were going to die. And the Mirathi had come. The Mirathi had shared their medical knowledge freely, asking nothing in return. They had saved 8 million Shellan lives. The Shellan had never forgotten. Next came the Vorish. They were aquatic beings, living in ships filled with water, communicating through songs that humans could barely hear. 60 of their vessels joined the battle, targeting Krath carriers with weapons that turned metal into rust in seconds. The Mirathi had helped the Vorish too. When their homeworld's oceans became poisoned by asteroid impact, the Mirathi had taught them how to clean the water. They had asked for nothing. Finally, the Thornery arrived. They were beings of living crystal, slow to speak and slow to act, but impossibly strong when they chose to fight. 40 of their stone-like ships crashed through Krath lines, like hammers through glass. The Mirathi had given the Thornery something precious long ago. They had shared the secret of faster-than-light travel. They had asked for nothing. Now everyone was paying the debt. Vorath watched his fleet crumble. Ships exploded around him. His beautiful blockade became a graveyard. He had come here to conquer helpless prey. Instead, he had awakened something terrible. 4 species, fighting together. For one race of gentle beings who had done nothing but show kindness, Admiral Una saw the tide turning. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice never wavered. All ships, press the attack. For the Mirathi. For everyone who remembered. By the end of the 4th hour, the Krath fleet was broken. Over 200 of their ships were destroyed. The rest were fleeing. Commander Vorath's flagship was surrounded and captured. The Battle of Velith Prime was over, on the surface of the planet. Elder Solemn Light watched the sky fill with light, explosions, deaths, ships dying so that her people could live. She wept. Her glow flickered and pulsed with grief and gratitude. Around her, other Mirathi fell to their knees and sang songs of sorrow and thanksgiving. The humans had paid their debt, and they had inspired others to pay theirs. The galaxy would never be the same. The silence after battle was the hardest part. Captain Park Do-yeon stood on the bridge of remembrance and looked at the wreckage floating outside his windows. Broken ships, scattered debris, bodas drifting in the cold dark. Some of the bodas were Krath, most were human. 143 human ships had been destroyed. Over 40,000 people were dead. Fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, captains and crew members. All of them gone. Remembrance herself was barely alive. Her engines were failing. Her hull was torn open in 3 places. Half her crew was dead or wounded, but she had survived. Somehow, against all odds, she had survived. Lieutenant Choi Minji sat at her station with blood on her face from a wound she hadn't bothered to treat. Her hands were shaking. She couldn't make them stop. Ensign Hanjisu was dying. He lay in the medical bay, surrounded by doctors who couldn't save him. The plasma burn had gone too deep. His organs were failing one by one. When Minji came to see him, he smiled at her with pale lips. "We did it," he whispered. "Didn't we?" Minji took his hand. It was cold. "We did it. The Mirathi are safe. The Krath are beaten. Good." Jisu's eyes were growing dim. "My grandmother always told me about the Mirathi. She said they were the kindest people in the galaxy. She said we owed them everything." He coughed weakly. "I'm glad I could help pay it back." "You did," Minji said. Her voice was breaking. "You paid it back? You were so brave, Jisu." He smiled again. "Tell my mother I was brave. Tell her I wasn't scared. You weren't scared." "I was terrified." His smile grew wider, even as his eyes closed. "But I did it anyway. That's what being brave means, right?" He died holding her hand. Minji stayed with him for a long time. She didn't cry. She had forgotten how, across the system, the human fleet gathered its wounded and counted its dead. Admiral Kim Yuna moved from ship to ship, meeting survivors, thanking them, sharing their grief. Her uniform was torn. Her face was bruised. She had been on the bridge when a Krath torpedo hit Sol's Promise. She had kept commanding through smoke and fire. Now she stood in the flagship's medical bay, surrounded by hundreds of injured humans, and she felt the weight of every death pressing down on her shoulders. "Admiral," her aide said softly, "the Krath commander has been brought aboard. He's demanding to speak with you." Yuna nodded slowly. "Bring him." Commander Voreth was not impressive anymore. His scales were cracked. His 4 eyes were dull with defeat. His claws were bound, his weapons taken. He stood before Yuna like a broken thing. "Kill me," he said. "That's what you want, isn't it? Revenge for your dead?" Yuna looked at him for a long moment. She thought about 40,000 human lives. She thought about Ensign Hanjisu dying with a smile on his face. She thought about all the species the Krath had enslaved, all the worlds they had broken, all the cruelty they had spread across the galaxy. She wanted to kill him. She wanted it so badly she could taste it, but she was human. And humans were more than their anger. "No," she said. "I'm not going to kill you." Voreth's eyes widened in confusion. "Then what? Prison? Torture?" "Neither." Yuna stepped closer to him. "I'm going to make you understand. You're going to spend the next 10 years traveling to every world your empire conquered. You're going to see every slave camp, every broken city, every mass grave. You're going to meet the survivors and hear their stories. You're going to understand exactly what your people have done." Voreth stared at her. "That's your punishment? Making me look at things?" "Death is easy," Yuna said. "Understanding is hard. We're giving you the harder sentence." She turned away from him. "Maybe, after 10 years, you'll understand why we came here. Why we bled for people we'd never met. Why kindness matters. She paused at the door. Or maybe you won't, but you'll have the chance. That's more than you ever gave anyone. She left him standing there, confused and defeated. The news of the battle reached every corner of the galaxy within days. Every species heard the story. 200 human ships against 300 Krath warships. Civilians dying beside soldiers. 4 species joining together to protect one race of gentle healers, and at the end, the humans showed mercy. They didn't slaughter their defeated enemy. They didn't seek revenge. They asked only for understanding. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. On Earth, the mourning lasted for months. Every colony held memorials. Every city lit candles for the dead. The names of the fallen were carved into monuments that would stand for centuries. But alongside the grief, there was something else: pride, wonder, the knowledge that humanity had proven something important about who they were. Beek Soyoung's grandchildren grew up hearing stories about their grandmother, the woman who flew a cargo ship into a Krath cruiser to start a battle that changed history. Han Jisu's mother received a medal for her son's bravery. She hung it above her door and told everyone who visited about the boy who died paying a debt he never owed. Captain Park Do-yun returned to Earth a hero. He didn't feel like one. He felt tired and sad and old. But when children ran up to him in the streets asking him to tell the story of Velith Prime, he always did, because the story mattered. The memory mattered. Humanity would never forget. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. The Dominion of Krath, once the most feared empire in known space, collapsed from within. It started with Commander Vorath's testimony. Admiral Yuna had kept her promise. She sent Vorath on a journey across every conquered world. He saw the slave camps where children worked until they died. He saw the mass graves where entire species had been buried. He saw the broken survivors who flinched when they heard Krath words. At first, Vorath felt nothing. He had been raised to see other species as tools, as resources, as things to be used. But months of walking through horror began to crack. Something inside him. He met a woman from a species called the Veth. She had lost her entire family to Krath raiders. She was the last of her kind. When Vorath stood before her, she didn't scream or cry or attack him. She simply looked at him with tired eyes and asked, why? He had no answer. By the end of his journey, Vorath was a different being. He returned to Krath space and began to speak. He spoke about what he had seen. He spoke about what his people had done. He spoke about the humans who had every reason to kill him and chose mercy instead. His words spread like fire. Young Krath began to question their elders. Enslaved species began to rise up. The empire that had seemed unbreakable crumbled in 3 years. When it was over, the Krath came to the Galactic Assembly not as conquerors but as beggars. They asked to join as equals. They promised to change. Many species wanted to refuse them. The Krath had caused too much pain. They deserved to suffer, but humanity spoke for them. Ambassador Yun Hyung stood before the assembly and argued for the Krath's admission. She was young, only 32, but she carried herself with quiet strength. Her great-great-grandmother had been a child aboard Dawn Seeker 300 years ago. The Krath did terrible things, Hyung said. We know this. We fought them. We bled because of them. But we also showed them mercy. We gave them a chance to understand. And they did understand. Vorath changed. His people are changing? If we refuse them now, we prove that mercy was meaningless. We prove that understanding was a lie. She looked around the great chamber, at representatives from 100 species. We are not asking you to forget what the Krath did. We are asking you to believe that people can change. That kindness can transform even the cruelest hearts. That's what the Mirathi taught us 300 years ago. That's what we're trying to teach the galaxy now. The vote was close, but the Krath were admitted. Later that day, the Assembly offered humanity a seat on the High Council. They had never offered this to such a young species before. But humanity had earned it. Not through conquest, not through power, through something the galaxy was still learning to understand. Hyung accepted the seat on behalf of Earth. Her acceptance speech was broadcast to every world. "We did not fight for power," she said. "We did not fight for territory. We fought because 300 years ago, strangers showed us kindness when we were weak and lost. The Mirathi asked for nothing. We gave everything. This is who humans are." She paused, and her voice grew stronger. "Help us once, and we will remember forever. Hurt those we love, and we will shake your worlds to dust. But show us that you can change, and we will welcome you as friends. This is our promise to the galaxy. This is what it means to be human." The assembly fell silent. 100 species sat in wonder at these strange beings who valued memory and mercy above all else. On Velith Prime, Elder Solemn Light watched the broadcast with tears in her ancient eyes. Around her, young Mirathi children played in gardens that bloomed with flowers from a dozen worlds. They would grow up safe. They would grow up free. Because of a debt paid in blood and fire. Captain Park Do-yun stood beside her. His hair was gray now. His arms still ached from wounds that never fully healed. He had retired from the fleet, but he visited Velith Prime often. It had become a second home. Was it worth it? Solemn Light asked him. All those lives. All that pain. Was it worth it? Do-yun watched the children playing. He thought about Hanjisu, dying with a smile on his face. He thought about Beek Soyoung, flying toward death without hesitation. He thought about 40,000 humans who had given everything for a debt they never owed. "Yes," he said. "Every life. Every ship. Every scar. It was worth it." Solemn Light reached out with 2 of her 4 arms and took his hand. Her glow was soft and warm. "My ancestors made a choice 300 years ago," she said. "They saw dying strangers and decided to help. They didn't know what would come from that choice. They didn't know they were creating a bond that would last centuries." She looked up at the sky, where human ships still patrolled, keeping the Mirathi safe. "They just knew that kindness matters. That what we give to others comes back to us in ways we cannot imagine." Do-yun nodded. "Mankind never forgets kindness. Your ancestors gave us a future. We just returned the favor." They stood together in the garden, human and Mirathi, watching children play under an alien sun. Behind them, the statue of Captain Yoon Jie stood tall, the woman who had led Dawn Seeker through the darkness. Before them, a new generation grew up in a galaxy transformed by kindness. The debt was paid. But the memory would never fade, humanity would always remember, and they would always repay.